The gentleman yields. Now recognize the full committee ranking member, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will admit I am now more confused than when we began just a short time ago. Mr. Chair, you had indicated you had invited the FBI to testify, but I have no idea how they would have contributed to the conversation about what happened moments after the bombs were discovered. So I'm not sure I understand that. And if I understand now the line of questioning and the videos, it's to suggest failures by the United States Capitol Police regarding the establishment of the perimeters, securing evidence, and some questions now about the handling of the K-9 sweep. So I'm also curious, I'll ask this rhetorically, I'm not sure what the poster behind you, Mr. Chair, is. What does Donald Trump, fraud, Hutchinson, conspiracy, stolen, Meadows? I have no idea what any of this has to do with the hearing in question, which is about the pipe bomb. Yeah,
this was just as part of the opening statement as illustrative that the Select Committee, who was tasked with investigating this 2 years ago, only mentioned the pipe bomb 5 times. They mentioned that the size and the font of these words are how many times those particular words were used in that investigation, is to show the point that no one has taken a real look at this until this committee, which has pure oversight over this. As regarding the FBI was invited because they conducted the post-incident investigation of the device itself.
Okay.
Reel back.
All right. The fact that the poster's there, I think, signifies other things, but I'll leave you to your answer. I do want to give, I mean, this has been interesting. I'm not sure, and I'm no expert. Mr. D'Esposito and others are on the panel about law enforcement, so I don't want to leave without giving you, Assistant Chief Gallagher, who I've had the privilege of knowing now the last couple of years, some opportunity to describe. First of all, clearly a number of things were going on at the same time. I mean, these pipe bomb incidents were not in isolation. So maybe you could respond both to the questions, I don't know if they're allegations, but certainly suggestions that both sites were mishandled, number one, and talk about what was going on in the context of the things that were happening that day, if you could.
Sure, thank you. So as far as a allegation of failures by the U.S. Capitol Police officers, I want to be upfront and honest. The U.S. Capitol Police haven't shied away from the failures of that day, and those failures result in the leadership of Capitol Police, not with the police officers that were outnumbered. We suffered 80 officers who had injuries. We lost 2 of our heroes, one on the day after January 6th and one on January 9th. So we have well over 2,000 pages of after-action reviews resulting in all the, from the OIG reports, the GAO, General Honore study, that go into detail in every aspect of the department of what needs to be improved. All aspects of the department needed improvement. For context of that day, while we're dealing with the DNC, which I want to preface is off Capitol ground. So the primary jurisdiction for the DNC is Metropolitan Police Department. When our bomb techs showed up at the scene for the DNC, Metropolitan Police Department had an EOD technician there who asked our bomb techs to take the lead on the scene because our bomb techs show up with our equipment. So we had our robot. MPD did not have their robot. It would have taken a lot more time to get the resources there. The perimeter that was set up around the DNC, it looked chaotic because it was chaotic. We were dealing with a pipe bomb a couple blocks away at the RNC. We were dealing with a pickup truck that had 11 Molotov cocktails, machetes, rifles, handguns, ammunition in it. And at the same time, our officers were suffering the injuries on the west front of the Capitol and the east front of the Capitol. We had multiple calls for 1033, which is an officer in trouble. So as you can, for context, I would gladly give up a perimeter not being perfect to be able to get officers responding to help their brothers and sisters who were calling for help at the U.S. Capitol. It was a chaotic day. It was mentioned that we didn't have enough Capitol Police officers. We did not. We did not have any mutual aid that was on site already. So, and even for a 10-100, which is what we call a suspicious package, and I'm certain my colleagues seated to the left of me would agree, all of them have some issues with the initial perimeter, with getting resources there, with getting agencies there. Now, when you're looking at the DNC where you have multiple jurisdictions. Capitol Police are already stretched beyond their limits. We're fighting on the west front, the east front, officers getting injured. We have 1033 calls. We didn't have enough people to get down there immediately to set up this perfect perimeter where not one car, not one pedestrian could enter into that perimeter. The officers did the best that they could. We just did not have enough resources there.
Thank you. And this, of course, not to mention that for 3 hours, the occupant of the White House at the time failed to call out the National Guard, which could have clearly aided in support of the personnel at the Capitol. And I only raise that because the name behind it on the poster. I did want to ask a quick question in my remaining seconds of Mr. Keim. The question from the gentleman earlier was about the failure of the K-9 unit to discover the bomb. Are the dogs infallible? Do they ever miss something? I mean, is it likely that they would have missed, or is there something, would you necessarily conclude that the bomb wasn't there during the sweep as the gentleman did and that it was placed somehow afterward?
No, dogs are dogs. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're having a bad day. There's several reasons a dog could miss an explosive.
So is it, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but is it possible then in your judgment that the dog simply missed it, that it could have been there during the time of the sweep and the dog just didn't pick it up? Is that possible?
Yeah, anything's possible. We don't have a video of the actual sweep around the explosive device. I would say as a team, you know, you follow a pattern when you're doing a sweep. Once you've completed your sweep, you know, it's done, it's no longer secure. From what I've seen from the stills of the pipe bomb, if I'm doing a sweep with my canine and I come across a park bench with that sitting underneath it, I'm not putting my dog on it, right? I might not even try to get him into the cone, which is, you know, the odor, depending on which way the wind's blowing. Because once I see that, that becomes a very suspicious package. And if you really want to upset an EOD unit, go ahead and tell them you cleared that using your canine, right? That's just not again. You're literally stepping away from that as far as you can, securing the perimeter, making that perimeter incredibly large, and let EOD decide how much they're going to shrink it from that point on.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason for it. Why there's a still on the right-hand side of the sweep, but the dog. I mean, it's like a split screen. I don't know what happened to the video on the other side, but I guess.
Yeah, there's many reasons the dog might have had to go to the bathroom. It could be a ton of different reasons. Or the dog's been already been searching for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right, and now he's getting exhausted. Even if the weather's not hot, they only have a certain amount of time that they can actually be successful.
Gotcha. So necessarily reaching the conclusion that the dog, it wasn't that the device wasn't there and the dog would have caught it. That's not necessarily a conclusion.
No, it could also depend on the actual maker of the device and how well he concealed whatever the explosive was inside the pipe.
Very good. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the still on the right was just for reference as to where the device was, since the edge of the camera didn't cover that. So we had a still that would match up just so you could see where the device was in relationship to the dog. Another point of clarification, that sweep was done by the U.S. Secret Service. It wasn't the U.S. Capitol Police. And just for third point of clarification, I think it may be just hard to understand that maybe we're not used to actually having a nonpartisan, unbiased hearing actually try to get to the bottom, that we're not finger pointing. We're just trying to figure out what happened, what went wrong, what went right, and how we can make sure it doesn't happen again. So with that, I recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just reiterate your point. This isn't here to point fingers. This is a learning exercise, and this is our job to provide a supervisory role and to review information and to help us all prevent the miscues that happened during this event. You know, there was a lot going on, to your point, but also lives were at risk here, and there were some very, very important cues missed. And the basic line is, how do we prevent that from happening in the future? Not pointing a finger at anybody. So we do the same thing in the operating room. If you screw up, there's a redo, see where it then went wrong to try to prevent a problem again. So thank you all for coming. Mr. Gallagher, I just want to continue a little bit line of questioning. Who is responsible for the command and control of the DNC pipe scene?
The U.S. Capitol Police had the incident command, and our bomb squad was the lead bomb squad for the DNC scene.
Okay. And that bomb squad would have, that dog would be a bomb sniffing dog?
The dog that was at the scene was a U.S. Secret Service canine.
And what does that mean?
It is one of their bomb sniffing dogs.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. There were over 30 vehicles and a pedestrian allowed to enter the active crime scene, and I thought that's been gone before. I'm not a, police officer or anything, but I would assume that would be anathema to what a crime scene should have. Is that fair?
That's fair.
What types of additional training or equipment would be beneficial moving in the future? Because again, we're trying to learn from this episode. What would happen in the future to prevent such a problem with command and control problems that we would have in the future?
So in the future, for events like this, and we have this in place now, any large-scale events on Capitol grounds, we have funding to bring in mutual aid so that we're not understaffed, so that we have the contingency plans in place to be able to handle multiple incidents, multiple areas of Capitol grounds with mutual aid on site. Thank you. With mutual aid on site. In addition to that, we have implemented training post-January 6th for a whole host of reasons with Incident Command, which deals with Area Command, Incident Command, scene perimeters for all sworn employees of the U.S. Capitol Police.
Okay, thank you. All right, at 1:09 p.m., the operator of the USP camera facing, I really want to get into this camera issue, facing the DNC garage began to zoom in on the position of that pipe bomb. Approximately 1:40 p.m., the same camera was turned away and faced south on South Capitol Street, and a second camera on the west side of the DNC was also turned away at 2:20 p.m. Both times, neither of the cameras were turned back. Do you have any idea why the cameras were moved? Who did it?
So that would be speculation on my part as to who was working the cameras there. We have trained command center specialists who are the ones that operate our USCP cameras. The cameras with...
Would there not be a time log of who would be working those at this specific time?
There would. I don't have that with me.
Okay.
With regards to our cameras at the DNC, I'm aware of the speculation of moving some of the cameras. There were 3 cameras that capture various aspects of the DNC. The 2 that you mentioned, one does move, and I don't have the camera number off the top of my head, but
Sure.
one does move away from the DNC, and it goes up by the U.S. Capitol Power Plant where the incident command post was. So when you start to see it zoom in, it's zooming in on our U.S. Capitol Police command post location, which is typical for a command center operator to zoom in on the command post. The second camera that you mentioned that moves, that starts to move, it captures certain areas of the DNC, and then it looks like it starts to move to check on street closures and various other aspects of the response. There is one camera that captures the entirety of the scene at the DNC. That captures where the pipe bomb was located, the evacuation of the protectee that was there, the K-9, our counter surveillance agent that finds the pipe bomb, and continues unmoved and catches the robot coming down as well as the disruption. So we do have, a camera that takes the whole complexity of that scene. I think it's important to note, too, we have 1,800 cameras on the Capitol complex. On that day, we probably had
But these are manually moved, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so somebody had to move it away from that, correct?
Yes, sir. As to why, speculation as to why those cameras would not have been moved back, because we probably had 2 or 3 camera operators in our command center, and they're also dealing with the scene at the RNC and all of the breaches at the U.S. Capitol as well.
Absolutely understand. I absolutely understand. I think, to the chairman's point, we're just trying to gather some information here. This is not a partisan issue. This is protection of the executive branch. It's protection of the legislative branch, everybody else. So with that, Mr. Chairman, actually, just real quick question, Mr. Black. Was that those were both functional pipe bombs, correct?
Yes.
Both functional. Okay, thank you. You're back.
Gentleman yields back now. Recognize Mr. D'Esposito, law enforcement officer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to move through this quick because I do have a lot of questions and I want to get to a point. Chief Gallagher, during the course of the events on January 6, 2021, Capitol Police radio dispatchers were clearly overwhelmed, which they should have been, with the amount of information being transmitted, the number of events occurring at the same time, ensuring transmissions were on appropriate channels, and providing accurate info. Dispatch, for example, provided inaccurate information regarding the evacuation routes of civilians from the DNC, wrong address for incident command post locations, wrong callback numbers, and in many cases, the dispatchers expressed audible panic and confusion. I've been on the other side of that radio. I've been on the other side of the radio when, the stuff is hitting the fan, and you need people on the other side of that radio that are able to calm everyone down and get them the correct information. Can you briefly describe the responsibilities of dispatchers for the Capitol Police?
Sure. So our dispatchers are responsible for basically the lifeline for the officers out in the field. Anything that they need, they go through the radio. The dispatchers are trained. They're highly competent dispatchers that are set up to handle multiple incidents. They got overwhelmed that day, just like the officers got overwhelmed as well.
Absolutely. And this is sort of not on the same topic, but just from my knowledge, are civilian members of the Capitol Police part of the FOP?
No, they are not.
Okay. Their training, the dispatcher training, do you believe that they receive adequate training?
I do believe they've received adequate training.
And
yes.
continuous training?
Yes.
Okay. Moving to something different, at approximately 13:13 hours, a United States Capitol Police officer asked dispatch to identify an incident commander for the DNC pipe bomb. After it took multiple attempts to secure an incident commander, dispatch finally identified an established incident commander and then proceeded to provide an incorrect location for that incident commander. A second officer answered over the radio and attempted to correct the mistake by providing 2 additional locations which were also incorrect. This led dispatch to erroneously call out another incorrect location for the DNC pipe bomb. I know the answers to these questions, and I'm just trying to get to a point. Is this kind of confusion common?
This kind of confusion is not common with a regular incident. These type of incidents where you had explosive devices, multiple explosive devices, breaches at the west front, east front, it is a chaotic scene, as you
Right, and in a perfect world, which is one that we never operate in, obviously what we would want to happen is all the information be crystal clear and precise and what we need. Did the failure to establish an incident command lead to subsequent breaches of the perimeter?
I would say the lack of resources and officers between not only U.S. Capitol Police, Metropolitan Police, it was their primary jurisdiction as well, to be able to secure that perimeter is what caused people and vehicles to traverse it.
Okay. So lastly, I just want to comment on Ms. Torres's remarks in the beginning, that we're here to point the finger. We serve a purpose here in House administration, and that is to provide oversight to the Capitol Police. And it is also our job to provide the resources, the training, and everything necessary so that you can do the job that you're supposed to do. And you made a comment, Chief, and your quote, that you and the department has, or specifically you, not shied away from the failures of that day. If that doesn't mark the remarks of a true leader, I'm not sure what does, and I would serve under your command any day. And I think it is our job to make sure that those failures, and that's what we're here. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to point fingers. We're not here to talk about defunding the police. We're not here to, as Ms. Torres say, Monday morning quarterback. There is no time to Monday morning quarterback any incidents that police officers have, and until they wear the gun belt, until they pin that shield on their chest, they have no idea what law enforcement officers do every day. But it is our job, as part of this committee, again, to provide you everything that you need. And when we have incidents like this, or any other incidents, if we're not going to take the time to critique it, if we're not going to take the time to see what happened, what went well, and what failed, well then, we're not doing our job, and neither are you, right? The purpose of this is to find ways that we can improve. If protocols failed, we need to change them. If training failed, we need to do it better. If there's opportunities for more resources, if we need to work better with other law enforcement agencies so that we can keep people safe, well then we need to foster those relationships. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I think that was a good way to wrap up this hearing here today. I appreciate everyone being here. We have Chief Manger here with us today, as well as other members of the leadership. The chairman of the Capitol Police Union, Gus Papa. I am not even going to try to pronounce the last name, but I think everybody knows who he is. I appreciate all the witnesses being here. I would like to just offer one piece of clarification to make sure I understand this right, and I think it was Mr. Keim. We were talking about the U.S. Secret Service and the dogs. I want to make sure you understand what your response was, that it's not the dog's responsibility to identify the device, but the handler. So the fact that the device was seen and close by, would it not be the actual handler who should have noticed it, not just relying on the dog?
Yes, when you have a canine team, it's a team for a reason. You got the dog and the handler. The handler's looking for areas, anything to put the dog on, to use the advantage of the dog, right? Dogs have a 40% stronger sense of smell than we do. So the dog's purpose is to find that we can't see. The handler's position is to locate the areas to put. As you're doing a pattern search and you see that, you wouldn't even put your dog on that, on an explosive pipe or any suspicious package. You would back off.
Okay, thank you. I just felt that was important for clarification, as we're not trying to point fingers at the dog for not doing his job, but to get a better understanding of how this works. I commend the Capitol Police for all that they went through and stood the line that day. It was a very bad day, and we want to continue to do our oversight, as Mr. D'Esposito said, not to point fingers, but to make sure that we do correct what was done wrongly. We do depoliticize the Capitol Police, make you able to do your job according to the way you need to without the politicization aspect of it, and make sure that you have the training and the resources you need to do a very difficult job. Again, thank you all for being here. Members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for you, and I can pretty much assure you that we do. And we ask that you please respond to these in writing. We will submit these questions to you. If you will respond in writing. Without objection, each member will have 5 legislative days to insert additional material into the record or revise and extend their remarks. If there is no further business, I thank the members for their participation, and without objection, this subcommittee stands adjourned.